What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here, DFS Army, breaking down the Showdown Thursday night football between the Steelers at the Browns. And, the where my turds at theme is appropriate here because this is a pretty turdly game with a 40-point total. Browns standard 3-point home favorites, which is interesting because both these teams kind of suck, right? Couple shitty teams here. So lots of turdliness in terms of the overall teams that we're looking at. But actually, both of these offenses are very concentrated. So we've got a pretty good idea of where the football is going to go. I've got a pretty reasonable expectation of how this game should play out. Obviously, this is football, and these are single game contests, so you never know, right? You never know. But there's a pretty reasonable expectation of how this game could potentially play out, so we're going to cover that. I'm going to talk about both teams kind of struggling a little bit on offense for the most part all season. The Steelers, because they've got the backup quarterback, just hasn't been super efficient. And the Browns, I think, because their coaching staff, I just think is terrible. And they were just a disappointing team this year all around. And they've had a hard time readjusting and kind of leveling themselves off. No excuses for the Browns. So let's get into breaking down both of these teams. And, I always have a hard time knowing, should I start with DraftKings? Should I start with FanDuel? I think FanDuel is simpler. So we'll start with DraftKings and the breakdown and get an idea of who are the potential captains in this. What the hell is this? Oh, this is my sheet. Hang on. Let's go to the DraftKings sheet here. All right, so we can get an idea of who the potential captain plays are, who are the potential flex plays, and of course, who are the turds that are going to make it all possible for us. And this week, we're not going to need to get too turdly because neither one of these teams gets too silly with who they throw to. So instead of that, we're going to be getting heavier on defenses and kickers because whenever there's a low total game, that's what happens. Kickers and defenses come into play. I say it all the time. People don't listen, but 40-point game total, that's when we have to look at both defenses, both kickers as possible, plays, and that's our pay down options on DraftKings. So then we can afford some of these better players, and we're going to cover a lot of those guys, including some big name players that I think have a better chance this week of kind of doing some damage than they have recently, and at the wide receiver position, and that being Odell Beckham Jr. and Juju Smith-Schuster, both who have much better matchups than they've had in recent weeks. So let's get into it. Jump over to DraftKings. I like to go team by team. So let's look at the Steelers first. Now, the one thing that stands out here is a terrible, if you're a misprice on Jalen Samuels. Now, understand what happened here, guys. Why is Jalen Samuels 8,800? It's not because he's worth that. It's because when DraftKings was pricing the game, they weren't sure if the Terminator, James Conner, was going to play. So for all intents and purposes, if you're playing, am I in FanDuel or DraftKings here? Let me make sure I'm on the right one. Okay, so if you're playing Jalen Samuels, you're overpaying by a ton. I mean, look at the projection of a Mason Rudolph for cheaper, of Jarvis Landry for less. So it's a massive overpay to even start sniffing around Jalen Samuels on DraftKings. Right? Again, his price reflects the possibility that Conner wasn't going to play. Conner looks like he's fully healthy. Now, very important in this game is the Terminator himself, James Conner. All right? A healthy Conner taking on a Browns defense that's just been mediocre against the running back position all season long. Can't stop the run. Obviously, we like home teams better for the running back position overall. But Conner should get a full workload here. Doesn't carry an injury designation into this game. Should be fully healthy. Even when Jalen Samuel was out there, I mean, look at the workload he got in his last game. You could tell that even with Samuel out there, that the Steelers don't want to put the ball too much into Mason Rudolph's hands. Like, he throws it a lot, but he's usually dumping off to running backs. And that's one of the things. Like, Samuel could get some targets in this game. That's Schuster. Samuels can get some targets in this game, right? It's not out of the question that he comes in and gets 5 or 6 targets in the passing game. But now he's basically playing a similar role to Kareem Hunt. And we can get Kareem Hunt for a lot cheaper. So we'll talk about that. But getting back to the Pittsburgh side, Connor's our top play. Juju Smith-Schuster comes into play here. The Browns do not do a good job covering the slot receivers, opposing slot receivers. So last week, Smith-Schuster saw Jalen Ramsey in coverage. That's why this guy, he's had a series of brutal matchups. Now he's got a much easier matchup. So I like Smith-Schuster here. I think they're going to feature him in the passing game. They're going to try to get him going. Again, the Browns don't have anyone that can really cover him. And I like him even more if we think the Browns are going to score. So like in a Browns-heavy sort of onslaught type of lineup where you might have like a Nick Chubb, a Hunt, an Odell Beckham, you bring it back with Schuster because that's who they're going to be throwing to. Quarterback, always a good play in showdowns. It's not like Mason Rudolph has been lighting shit up, but he's priced accordingly. That's what's really interesting. He's one of the cheapest priced quarterbacks I can recall seeing recently on a showdown who's starting. So at 8,400, the optimizer is going to jam him into every fucking lineup. Like, that's going to be your default. And if I was making a cash lineup, I might start off with Terminator, up top here, and then I try to get Rudolph in there. And the reason I'd get Rudolph in there is he's too cheap. It's crazy. We could throw some defense, we throw a kicker, and now you get some pieces from the other team. So that would be an interesting cash approach. Let's continue because we got some more players to talk about on the Steelers. Last week, James Washington finally got involved in the offense a little bit for the Steelers team. 20 fantasy points, 7 targets. Like, he was really involved, and it was nice to see. But he's been pretty much very turdly. Good for 4 or 5 targets a game, but just has not done a whole lot with them. He's got to be in your mix. And if you have like a Rudolph-centric captain lineup, I'd want a couple of these guys in my mix. So I'd want a Washington. I'd want a Schuster. I'd want maybe, Washington or Deontay Samuel. So I'd want a few of these guys. Where's Deontay? Yeah, Deontay Johnson. There we go. I'd want a few of these guys in that lineup or a Vance McDonald. So this is your basic pass-catching crew for Rudolph. If you're going to set a rule on the domination station for Rudolph captain, if you're putting him here at the captain spot, what that means is he's probably throwing to 2 or 3 of these guys. So you might want to do at least 2 of type of rule. Make sure you get 2 of these guys in every lineup that has Rudolph as the captain. If he's just in your flex, you don't need to have that rule because realistically, in the flex at his salary, we're only looking at 14 points. It's funny because Rudolph, yes, he has the higher floor, but if players like Schuster, Deontay Johnson, even Washington, they'll quickly pass that 14-point projected number if they're just involved. So keep that in mind as you're constructing these lineups. It's very important that every lineup you construct tells a story. Is this a game where the Browns jump out to a lead and the Steelers are playing catch up? Is it the opposite? Is it a low-scoring turd fest like what I'm expecting tonight? So in that case, we want to focus on defense and kickers. It's important to note that defense is very positively correlated with kickers. So if you're playing Steelers defense, you really want to get Boswell in there, for example, and get that as your start. And if you go the other way, which is totally viable too, and we'll talk about that on the Cleveland side, you could do the same with Cleveland kicker. Kicker, defense, running back are all positively correlated with one another. So we could build around those correlations when we're constructing these lineups. Remember, if you don't build a correlated lineup that's kind of got uniqueness in that way, you ain't winning. Okay? There's 130,718 people in this contest. You're not going to win by going, picking the best names. That doesn't win. Actually, that looks pretty fucking good, but that doesn't win. That's not how it works. You got to have some uniqueness. You got to build around the story. So where my turds at? Benny Snell is out. Trey Edmonds not going to play. Ryan Switzer is out. Vanette doesn't get very much action at all. Don't want any of that. Holton, there are no turds for the Steelers. Nothing. We don't have any turds. All the names I mentioned are starters. There's really no one else that we have to worry about. So that's kind of cool. Like I said, the whole turd crew, no thanks. Let's see what the domination station says when we if I want to see if there's any Steelers that even show up down here. Yeah, Trey Edmonds, bullshit. Uncheck you, right? I don't like it. I will uncheck that. Nick Vanette, not interested. I mean, Vanette, I guess. The backup tight end, the number 2 tight end. How many times have we seen that win a showdown? Like, it happens once in a while. So that's your 5%er. But other than that, it's a really small group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projected, 10 projected players basically for the Steelers. You can wipe him out. We've got defense and kicker. That's always the 2. And then your 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, quarterback. It's just a small crew. We don't have to account for 4th and 5th wide receivers, multiple tight ends, or any of that. Now let's take a look at the other side of this game, the Cleveland side. Okay, Cleveland struggling all season. They've been, trying to put it together. Last week they really tried to get the football to Odell Beckham. You'll see they threw it to him a lot. It didn't work. But part of that was because Odell Beckham Jr. Was being covered by, or the Bills have elite cover corners. They have one elite corner that was on Odell all game. And it's one of the reasons I liked and played a lot of Jarvis Landry last week, was because you knew they weren't going to have a lot of success trying to get it to Odell. I forget the name of the cornerback for the Bills, but he's elite. And he did a good job shutting Odell down. But I think what was positive was seeing all of these targets and seeing the emphasis they put on Odell. And I love Captain Odell this week. The Browns are at home. They're probably going to force the issue to Odell Beckham again. No one likes playing him. Everybody gets burned by him. There's a bad taste in your mouth whenever you think of Odell Beckham Jr. So, for that reason, Odell makes for an excellent play overall. Let's see what he projects for. But, he's got a good projection. Solid. And wide receivers can crush their projection a lot easier than other positions can, because they just can. It's PPR, and if you throw to him 12 times, if he gets 12 targets in this game, I promise you this guy's passing 20 points. And he'll be probably the highest scorer on the slate. So let's keep that in mind. Odell, a great play. The running back situation. What an interesting thing it was last week. Should we play Hunt? Shouldn't we play Hunt? What should we do? Is it going to affect Chubb? The whole thing was really interesting, but Chubb still got a ton of looks, 20 touches, crossed 100 yards. He's probably the highest overall. It's between him and Connor, and I like. There's a bunch of players that are potential captains. Let's see what Josh has up north has here. So he's got Connor, Chubb, Odell. A little bit of Mayfield. I don't think we need that. Juju, I would do a little bit more, a little less Landry, and certainly each defense is in play. So this is the recommended captain grouping from Josh DFS up north. I'm pretty on board with this for the most part. I'd probably have a little more Juju Smith-Schuster than this, or level out between Schuster and Landry. I do like the defenses as well, but pretty much that's the group. Connor or Chubb, fine. I don't want to go nuts with them because neither one of them has been that kind of dominant force. And certainly Odell and Juju Smith-Schuster have potential here. Either one of them can have a big game. Again, Baker Mayfield, Baker Mayfield's interesting because getting back to what I was saying before with Nick Chubb and just the general what's been happening here. Screen acting weird. Let me see if I can. That's weird. But just in general, what's been happening here is Chubb still got 80% touches last week. He was still out there for 80% of the game. But they brought in Kareem Hunt at the same time. He was there for 50% of the touches. Look at this guy. 9 targets, 7 receptions. They basically used him as a pass catching back, which is crazy because he wasn't even really used as a pass catching back last week. Here we go. That's a really good question, my man. And yeah, Hayden looked amazing against Kupp last week. He'll be on Odell. I think Odell can beat that level of coverage. But definitely play for the possibility that if he gets shut down, that Jarvis Landry is the dude. So that's important to account for it when you're making your lineups. Still got to have Odell, though. Still got to have some. But, you want to count. What the fuck is going on here? I got to deal with this. Okay, let's go back. So, yeah, you want to account for that possibility because last week we saw with the Hayden effect, if there is a Hayden effect, that it was Jarvis Landry who was really doing the damage last week. And Landry had been so inefficient up until that point that it was really very, very impressive that he finally started coming together. All right, so Kareem Hunt, major pay down option after Landry. Kareem Hunt projects a little bit better in my mind than Jalen Samuels, or about the same, but for $3K less. He's 5,800. Jalen Samuels, 8,800. It's ridiculous. Oh, here we go. So, where was I? Kareem Hunt put up 14 points last week. He's one of the stronger plays. They're clearly going to game plan to get him the football via the pass. The price is too cheap, guys. So I love the Hunt play here. I didn't like him last week. Mea culpa. Everybody asked me, should I play Hunt? I said, nah, let's see what he does. Let's see what he does. All right. And I'm seeing some comments from some turds. I like it. Where my turds at? Let's talk about it. All right, so let's get to it. We're going down the list. Landry, Odell Beckham. Just want to point out, Landry, big week last week. 10 targets, 9 receptions. Did all the damage because Odell was being covered well. And we could see a similar repeat here with Hayden. Hayden? Yeah, we could see it. Have to account for it. In your lineup construction. All right. Browns defense. You know what? This Steelers team has not been... They got smoked by the Rams last week. Yes, their defense did great as well, but the Steelers offense is not efficient. And so Browns defense is certainly in play. Everybody's going to be on Steelers because the Steelers defense has scored really well all year. And actually, I'll open that up and show you here in a second. But yeah, let me show you because Steelers defense has been a scoring defense. Very aggressive. Look at these logs. Honestly, 25, 19, 13. Unbelievable. Great numbers. Patriots-esque numbers for Steelers defense. A lot of sacks, a lot of turnovers, forced fumbles, interception. I mean, look at all these 8 sacks in one game against the Bengals. Baltimore, they dominated. The Colts dominated. The Rams dominated. This Steelers defense is legit. So you can play this game understanding that as well. And going by how good the Steelers defense has been, you could assume that that's really going to limit what the Browns can do in this game. Craig Berg is asking if I'm using Odell or Juju in a Thursday to Monday, and the answer is no. Kenny G is asking about Carlson at $200 as a turd. I've never heard of this guy, and no, I don't know why you post in the comment section what it is about Carlson that I should be interested in. But in the meantime, let's get back to this breakdown here because I haven't gotten to my turds. Cleveland does have some turds that we have to keep an eye on, and maybe it is that Carlson guy, Kenny G. Man, post why you like that guy. But meanwhile, Demetrius Harris. So when we get past the main group for the Browns, you've got a couple of turdly kind of players here or secondary guys that will take a miracle for them to pay off. Rashard Higgins is one of them. He is sort of the WR3/4. He may or may not get the playing time. There's another wide receiver here, Callaway, that may be back for this game, that has actually been a little bit more efficient or the better guy. He was out last week from what I recall. So it could be Callaway, it could be Higgins, but I really think Kareem Hunt is getting a lot of those targets. So I'm not expecting very much out of these guys. The other turd, and so keep him under 5%. We have to keep an eye on Callaway to see if he's even going to play. If he is playing, benching was a one-game thing. Why was he benched? Healthy scratch. So I don't know what the fuck that was about. One game thing. So we'll probably get Callaway back, which might have him ahead of Higgins. Maybe. But maybe not. So yeah, Callaway's in here projected. A couple other possibilities. Demetrius Harris, Ricky Seals-Jones. Again, all very secondary. Any one of these guys can break the slate, but you don't want to have a lot of invested in players like this. 2 targets, 3 targets, 2. He had a couple of big games, this Ricky Seals-Jones, earlier in the year. But let's see. Full participant, game time decision. So we'll have to keep a close eye on Ricky Seals-Jones. Demetrius Harris is the other guy, playing tight end for the Browns. Again, doing a little bit every single week. Worth a shot, not delivering zeros. But, I mean, I like Harris a lot more if Ricky Seals-Jones is out. None of these people project for more than wanting 5 or so % exposure to them. So be careful when getting too turdly in your lineups. Now, lineup construction. The most likely way this game is going to play out is a defensive battle. There's a 40-point game total. The spread is close. Cleveland is favored at home. It's funny because it's surprising for me. I really thought that the Steelers, I thought they'd be favored in this game. So I'm a little bit surprised. Let me see if I can get the latest live odds here, if I have that screen up. Yeah, I'd love to see the newest numbers, of course, but I don't have the screen up over here. I do. Hang on. So I'm going to check the latest live odds on this game. I just want to see. Let's take a look at the line history here. Let me put that on screen for you guys. So the game total is actually creeping up here. It's gone up to 41.5 points. The spread has been kind of back and forth between 2.5 and 3. So, it opened at 41.5, came down to 40. It's back up to 41.5. So still a low scoring game. Trying to think why it would go back up to 41.5. I have to assume maybe it's because Connor's back and maybe they thought that that's going to help the, they think that that's going to help the Steelers offense kind of be a little bit more efficient. Obviously, yes, Kyle is mentioning the bookies are pushing people to bite on the Steelers, and they are. And so one of the things I'll do after this is if I can find John Statsational or Ryan Fight on 2016, I'm going to ask them what they think about this game from a betting angle and see kind of where their heads are at. Some of the Beat the Bookie guys from DFS Army, see where their heads are at this thing. Because, it seems like a really easy bet on the Steelers. And whenever that happens, I start to think I should do the opposite. Like, wow, it seems too obvious to bet on the Steelers here. So kind of think I should do the opposite. But let me ask the Sharps about that before we get too crazy about it. Now, lineup construction. The most basic way we want to construct our lineup, let's say it was a cash game. you want to construct a high floor lineup. So, you've got Connor as one of the top plays here. Always get the running backs in there, right? Kareem Hunt catching passes, cheap, gotta love him. Lock him in, right? We got Mason Rudolph well underpriced here. We've got kicker and defense, and you're done. Oh, couldn't fit it. Switch it up. Oh, brutal. Well, that would be how I would want to set it up if you could. So, but in general, I want to try to get, you probably have to go, this is unfortunate. I really would have a hard time giving up any of these pieces, really. But, man, I think you might have to go use the cheaper kicker, unfortunately. I don't like it. I don't love it, but I might have to do it. So, anytime you can get the kickers in there, a quarterback, the running backs, that's kind of the approach I like to use in cash games. And in this case, I would use the Steelers defense. Or if we believe the odds makers, we can use Browns defense. And Browns, if you want to be a little different, Browns kicker, Browns defense, or Browns defense, Steelers kicker, just in case. So you get a little bit of more of an overall. Or I don't think I'd play Browns defense in cash, but I might just use both kickers, for example. Might just use both. It's like a cash game approach. But in tournaments, let's talk about correlations real quick. So for tournament play, if I'm playing the quarterback at the captain spot, I want two of his pass catchers in the lineup. So as soon as I start off a lineup, I'm going to start. I won't make a lot of quarterback captains, so it's not that much of a big deal. I don't like the quarterbacks as the captains in this spot per se, but let's say I did, and I did a Mayfield. I almost have to lock in Jarvis Landry and Odell into that lineup, because the only way Baker Mayfield is the nuts captain is if both of his pass catchers are going bananas. All right? Think about what leads to a win. Well, Mayfield, to be the perfect captain, has to outscore everybody else. Everybody else. They got to outscore everyone, right? So Mayfield would have to. Now, if Mayfield's just throwing to Odell and Odell's going bonkers, Odell is going to be the captain that wins somebody the money. It's not going to be Baker Mayfield. If you put Odell in here, you could probably put Baker Mayfield in there. So if you have a wide receiver here, you probably want to get their quarterback in there. Why? Because again, if Odell is going bananas to the point where he can win you this tournament, that probably means that Baker Mayfield is having a decent to good day. Think about your lineup. Somebody showed me a lineup in DFS Army Slack a few minutes ago that had a quarterback and nothing connected to that quarterback in the entire lineup. So it's so obvious that you haven't thought through your lineup when you're doing that. That's not how we do this. Is it possible, humanly possible, that situation occurs where a quarterback is the nuts captain and nobody catching passes from him is in the lineup and you still win all the monies? It's possible? What the fuck? It's possible, but that's not something we want to count on. Like, the chances of that happening are minuscule. So you have a wide receiver as your captain. Make sure you pair him with a quarterback from his team. And again, defense, if you're using a defense, there's about a 25 to 30% correlation with the kicker from the same team, and there's a reasonably high correlation with the running back from that team. So if I want to build around a defense, let's say I want to build around Steelers. If I can find it. Then I want me some Connor, and I want me some kicker from this team. Now this week, my turds are really just like these guys: Deontay Johnson, James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Vance McDonald. That's the area of turdliness that we're going to be dealing with, because clicking on any one of these names, be it Johnson, be it Washington, be it McDonald, every one of them feels low floor. Every one of them feels like a little dangerous. Like when you're clicking on them, there's no way of knowing which one of them is going to do well, or like, could it be Deontay Johnson? Sure, he's done great. James Washington? Sure, he had a good week last week. Is it going to be both? Probably not. It's also important to note that, again, the Browns play much better defense on the outside than they do against the slot. So for the Steelers, I really think this might be a Juju Smith-Schuster day. I did look at the props for this game, a lot of the game props, and nothing stood out. Schuster prop for over 4.5. The expectation is about 4 receptions, 4 to 4.5 receptions. Let me see if I can find this shit. Hang on. Let me go back to these props. This is a really cool tool here. So, oh shit. Do that over there. Let me get logged in and I'll show you some props. Right? So basically, when I looked over the props on this game, nothing stood out too intense. But if we could check out, let's just check out and see if we've got, we have no touchdown numbers, but for Nick Chubb, we've got 2.5 receptions, 81 rushing yards, 17 receiving yards. So about, 10 points, 12 points there. If he gets you the touchdown, and I don't have a touchdown prop here, unfortunately, but if he gets you the touchdown, you're talking about like a 17, 18 pointer. Let's see if Hunt has a prop here. Yeah, Kareem Hunt, they're giving us 3.5 receptions. Although the money is on the under for that 3.5. Not a ton of rushing yards, 30 receiving yards, and I think the money, on the under. So I don't know if I buy that. We'll have to see. And then of course Connor, of course, no touchdown prop here. I can get touchdown prop on a different sports book, but with Connor, we've got same 3.5 receptions, 65 yards, receiving yards. So, Connor actually projects maybe a little bit less overall work. It's funny to see it than Nick Chubb, but again, not something I'm really buying into very strongly. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. Don't lock anyone, guys. Don't lock anyone. Steve is asking about a kicker being the MVP. It could happen in this type of a game. It's pretty rare that a kicker is the MVP, but in this type of a game, it could happen. Just if it really goes low scoring and ugly, defense or kicker could get there, but it's very difficult because, again, think about the kicker position. He has to be having a spectacular day to get to 15 fantasy points, and other players on the team have to be having a really bad day. I've seen these two types of teams, though, play out, good defenses, where you do wind up with 4 or 5 field goals, and a kicker could get 20 points. So I definitely love the kickers, especially on Super Draft, where you get the massive multiplier for the kickers this week. That's going to be a spot where I'm going to get really, really into the kickers. Let's jump over to FanDuel real quick. Do you guys play FanDuel also? You just DraftKings? I never know. I like the FanDuel format for showdowns or single game contests because it's very winnable, right? There's fewer combinations that are going to work. Now, what's the difference between FanDuel and DraftKings? Well, FanDuel does not account for salary. In other words, putting a player into the MVP position on FanDuel, there's no salary penalty. So you must have the highest scoring player in the MVP spot on FanDuel. FanDuel scoring is also just generally different than DraftKings in the sense that on FanDuel, you don't get the PPR points. So touchdowns are king, right? So taking a look at the FanDuel sheet right now, Mayfield, Rudolph, Connor, Chubb, that makes sense. This is the right grouping. If you want to add in some wide receivers, and I don't think it's necessary, the wide receivers I'd add in are Schuster and Odell. Now, again, neither one of those guys really should crush on FanDuel. And again, so the first rule is if you have a wide receiver in the captain or the MVP spot on FanDuel, Make sure you play their quarterback in the flex. That's one. Number two, make sure that you don't play other pass catchers, especially expensive ones, from the same team. So, for example, I wouldn't want Odell Beckham as my MVP with both Landry and Mayfield in the flex. Now, the reason I don't want that is because if Landry and Odell are both putting up big numbers, big enough to be in the perfect lineup, chances are that it's Baker Mayfield who will be the guy that belongs in the MVP spot on FanDuel. FanDuel, we can really set rules based on logic, right? If two pass catchers from one team on the FanDuel scoring format, which does not like explode points for wide receivers, so they're gonna each need to score. Then there's no way that that quarterback doesn't wind up as the MVP itself, right? That's just how it works. It's the math of it. All right, looking at the rest of this list, guys, I got to pause for 1 second. I will be right back. Just hang out. I just heard something that I need to check. So I'm going to pause for 1 moment here. I will show you the sheet here. Give me a minute. All right, guys, I'm back, but I'm going to shut it down here. Got some shit I got to deal with at the moment. Crying kid. So good luck tonight. I'll be in Slack answering questions. We'll cover, I'll do a little breakdown of the Super Draft slate within DFS Army Slack for DFS Army subscribers. And beyond that, good luck tonight. Again, build lineups based on narratives. Build smart. Here's your breakdowns. DFS Army VIPs, check out the notes, and I will be in Slack answering questions. Don't forget to sign up for DFS Army as a VIP subscriber, and we have a new promo code. Use promo code TURDS. Where my turds at? Promo code TURDS. Before I let you go, I want to remind you one thing. Jalen Samuels is ridiculously overpriced on DraftKings. On FanDuel, do not use him. DraftKings, do not use him. He's ridiculously overpriced, or I won't be using him. So I'm hearing too much of Jalen Samuels. 10K is ridiculous. Even more ridiculous on FanDuel than DraftKings. He's priced as if Connor might not play. Connor is playing, so we don't want any of that. Yes, you're doing an article. Nice. All right, so Hunter will be doing a breakdown as well. Love that. Look forward to that. DFS Army members. That might be free. We'll see. Click on, check out dfsarmy.com and you could probably find Hunter's article real soon, breaking down different narratives. Those are always awesome. DFS gal, what's up, Hillis? Your styles aren't played out like Arnold. What you talking about, Willis? Vance McDonald, very playable. Of course. He's very cheap too. Great value on FanDuel, actually. Love Vance McDonald. He's probably the cheapest viable player on FanDuel for this particular slate. So, yeah, at 7,500, Vance, Shore, Deontay Johnson, lots of cheapies on FanDuel you can get involved with. And Kareem Hunt is less of a necessity on FanDuel because a lot of what he seems to be doing is in the PPR side of things. Still going to get some exposure. Don't go crazy. Remember, focus on kickers, defenses on this one. Take the value, running backs, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then all of the other pass catchers. Good luck, everyone. I will see you next time. Deuces.